issues that matter as far as not only the Philippines is concerned and as far as the world is concerned. There has to be noise cancellation because the world today is characterized by so much noise that many people are not able to distinguish real information from noise. Noise referring to misinformation and disinformation. As a result, not many actually understand that when we talk about security, particularly national security, it is affected significantly by misinformation, malinformation, and disinformation. And all of these are brought about by cyber security, by cyber war. Hence, we thought the first roundtable discussion to be about cybersecurity and its implications to national security. We entitled our series of roundtable discussions as noise cancellation because what we will be discussing in public would be matters and numbers that matter and will be brought straight to the public for consideration, and we will allow the public to make the decisions themselves. And so this is important that we're doing this live online. We have also invited our media partners and friends to be here with us, but perhaps some circumstances allow them only to participate online. Before anything else, let me introduce our friends who will take part in this roundtable discussion. I am proud to introduce to you no less the top blogger, political icon, and I should say commentator in the Philippines, Mr. Mike Cervera. Magandang hapon sa inyo, Mike.
Magandang hapon.
I am also proud to introduce no less the lawyer of lawyers, so to speak, the one who speaks to the heart of what matters to ordinary folks. And to a certain extent, he's someone who is looked up to not only by lawyers but also by academics. Let me introduce to you Dr. Attorney Professor Jimenez. I am equally proud to introduce to you no less someone from very close to me, my family, my son Nico Tayal, no less the peers data expert, and of course security expert, Mr. Nico Tayal. Online, we'll have also one of the leading political commentators in the country. She is called the political lavandera. And to be honest with you, if you look at the way she's been discussing issues online, it's not just about commenting. It's also about explaining, what matters most as far as key issues are concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Mau Villar. Last but not the least is our main presenter, a good friend of mine for decades now, and a leading cybersecurity expert, not only in Europe but also in the world, consulted by different organizations in different countries, different governments. He's been with us in the country, in the Philippines, when he was starting his career, and is now leading his own organization based in Bonn, in Germany. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Dr. Sven Herbig. With that, I give him the floor. I have not yet introduced myself. I'm Ed Tayal from Peers, and I will be your MC this afternoon, and hopefully we'll hear from you online as you ask your questions to our resource person and our members of the panel. Let me also acknowledge the presence of DWIZ in this event. Magandang hapon po ulit. Let's welcome Dr. Sven Irving.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for having me here today. It's always an honor and a pleasure to come back to the Philippines, where I started with my career, and seeing how developments are going on here. I wanted to give a bit of an input to cybersecurity, cyber threats, and what we're seeing right now. And I want to start a bit with what is cybersecurity from our perspective, and then go through the threats that we're seeing, especially the state-backed threats, not only cybercrime, but also what governments, other governments are or could potentially be aiming at doing to the Philippines, to the economy, to society, and to the government. And just gonna wait a second for my slides to be pulled up, so you can also follow online and in the room where we're going. But maybe a few words about me. Professor Daya already introduced me. I'm leading the cybersecurity program at the Interface, at the European tech policy think tank. We're based in Bonn and Berlin, with offices in Paris and Brussels. We're working on all kinds of tech topics: artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, disinformation, platform regulation. And in my past, I worked for the German government, for our Foreign Office, and for Germany's National Cybersecurity Agency, where I left a couple of years ago to join the think tank world and help, hopefully, decision makers, but especially also the public and media, to better understand our topic and to answer all the questions that need to be answered in order to make more effective government policies. So when we look at cybersecurity, cybersecurity is essentially, at its core, a tech topic. And what does it mean? It means that you want to do three things with your information. You want to keep them available, you want to keep them confidential, and you want to keep the integrity. What does it mean? As an example, if you're using, let's say, Facebook, right? You want to be able to log into your account. That means availability. Right? You want to make sure that whenever you want to log in, you can log into your account. It's availability, right? You want to make sure that only you and the people you send messages to directly have access to those messages. You don't want anyone else to read your messages, right? So that's confidentiality. And whenever before you go to bed, you post something, and then you wake up the next morning and you log in again, you want that message to be the same message that it was when you sent it. You don't want anyone to change it. You don't want anything in that message to be changed. So that's integrity. So maintaining confidentiality, availability, and integrity of information is the core of cybersecurity. Now, that's a very technical definition, and we later on included a couple of more things around it, which is, for example, legal frameworks. Also, in this country, we have a legal framework that governs parts of this IT security, this core cybersecurity. We have cultural aspects, like, are you aware, these emails where it says, like, oh, please click here, and then your security teams tell you, don't click this. It's cultural aspects. So you have legal aspects, you have cultural aspects, you have economic aspects. How is the software and hardware created that you're using? Who's servicing it? There's an entire economic ecosystem around it. And then there's a fourth aspect, for example, there's geopolitical ecosystem. For example, if two countries go to war, or luckily we don't see that too often recently, but in times of heightened geopolitical tensions, governments tend to utilize their cyber capabilities against each other. So geopolitical aspects, the change in geopolitical environments is also something that we need to take into consideration when we talk about cybersecurity. So all of these aspects surrounding the technical core of confidentiality, integrity, and availability are what makes cybersecurity. Now, you might argue that in an extended definition, you will also have misinformation there, disinformation, which erodes the fabrics of society, in our work, we try to not focus too much on that, but it's also part of what a lot of other definitions will see as misinformation and disinformation. One key aspect that I want to bring up, and I think we can already move 2 slides ahead. We can already move 1 slide ahead. If we're looking at the resilience slide.
We turned off the microphone because it's echoing.
Okay. One more. Yeah.
That's YouTube. This is the actual, and that's the YouTube.
Can I change it?
Here.
All right, cool. Right. So this it will take a second now.
That's YouTube. It takes 5 to 10 minutes.
All right. I just want to quickly show you that slide again, which I mentioned. In the core, you have confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and around that, you have all these other aspects that make cybersecurity. And then one of the core concepts that you should be familiar with is, yes, of course, you want to make sure that you defend yourself against a cyber operation, against someone trying to scam you. You know, like, all of that is good. We want to prevent that. We want to protect ourselves. But part of the truth is there will always be cyber attacks, cyber operations that will be successful. So no matter what you do, no matter how good you are, you have to always prepare for the worst case. The worst case is that criminals or intelligence agencies will be able to exploit vulnerabilities, will be able to breach your company, to breach your government agency, and you have to be prepared for that. And that we can call it part of civil defense, you can call it resilience, you can call it cyber resilience, but what it means basically is that as soon as there's a successful operation against you, you acknowledge it, you try to limit the damage it can do, you fix the vulnerability, and you get everything that needs to be operational running as fast as possible again. Like, think about your hospital. The first thing you want to do if you're breached by a cyber operation is you want to make sure that no person is harmed. And if there are some services that are interrupted, that you need to get online again to make sure that no one is hurt, that's the first ones. You get online again, you get operational again. You can do all the rest later on. But if you're resilient enough, that means that you can continue operations almost without disruptions, or keep the disruptions as short as possible. So, who are the baddies? Like, who are the bad guys that don't like that we have cybersecurity? Well, technically, you have 3 big groups. You have criminals, cyber criminals. They want to make money, and they want to make money as easy as possible. So they don't try hard to get into very secure stuff, such as banks, right? Because they just want to make money as fast as possible. If they can make money by targeting the ordinary citizen, they will do that. If they can make more money trying to go into local government units and ask for ransom because they encrypted the data and tell them they can only get their data back once they pay the ransom money, they will do that. If they know that they get more money from small and medium enterprises, they will go after them. Cyber criminals don't care about values, about hitting the right target in terms of they only have one target, they just want to make money as easy as possible, full stop. It doesn't differentiate them from other criminals normally. You have state actors, you have military agencies, you have intelligence agencies, you have police agencies, also trying to compromise certain networks. IT infrastructures in other countries, for example. Then you have other non-state actors. You have partisan groups, you have hacktivists, you have rebels, you have universities that are connected to state agencies that try to help them out. So you have a bunch of other actors, but ultimately what we want to look at, if we're looking at what should the Philippine government do about something, is where are they on quote unquote the spectrum of state responsibility. Like how close are they to a government? Like let's say, well, why are some guys from a university hacking us? And then you figure out they're actually very closely affiliated with a government agency in another country. So then it's not like a university or some students trying to compromise the infrastructure. It is that government leveraging non-state actors such as universities or companies to do that. Criminals are also affiliated with government agencies sometimes. A lot of Russian cyber criminals have connections to the government. Why do they have that? Because as long as they don't do anything against Russia or its allies, they can stay and have a safe haven in Russia. So they can compromise companies in Europe, in Western Europe for example, and law enforcement in Russia will not do anything about them, right? So it's an agreement. We see Chinese cyber criminals who during the day they work for government agencies in China, and at night they're using similar tools and their knowledge to make a bit more money, so they become criminals at night, so-called moonlighting. So that's why you have these actors. They are not completely separate from each other. They overlap, they're interconnected, and at the end of the day, if you look for a government response, you will always look at, well, how closely are they connected to what kind of government, who do they work for? And of course, if you are a citizen or a company, normally you don't really care about that. You just care about how you can protect yourself, defend yourself, and try to get everything running again. And everything else is supposed to be the government that is taking care of you, supporting you in that. Well, why do we have this event on cybersecurity? Because, well, threats are increasing fast. You have here like a timeline of threats from a German-based statistics dashboard, and you can see here, well, there are so many cyber threats, and they're increasing over time. So it's a prevalent issue, it's an emergent issue. We look at artificial intelligence becoming more and more prevalent, or machine learning enabled, software becoming more prevalent. Of course, it comes with more vulnerabilities, it comes with more breaches, attack surface. So also there, we're going to see an ever-increasing number of cyber threats. If you want to look at, for example, the cyber threat landscape and how it evolved. In the beginning, there was the internet. And right from the beginning of the internet, you basically already had political espionage, you had economic espionage, you had militaries trying to exploit it. Later on, we had sabotage operations, for example, the very famous Stuxnet operation, which was an Israeli-American corporation to halt the nuclear enrichment program in Iran. So they made sure that the centrifuges in Iran, in Natanz, were spinning out of control, so that the researchers in Iran didn't know what hit them, and they were like, our program's not working, what are we doing wrong? You had, in the military use case, you had Operation Orchard, for example, which was the Americans, or the Israelis in that case, shutting down Syrian air defenses through cyber operations so they can carry out airstrikes without losing any one of their fighter jets. And then we have, of course, huge surveillance operations. One of the most famous ones is, of course, the Golden Shield project, also known as the Great Firewall of China, which was initially developed as a database for the police, and later on turned into a full-scale surveillance program to make sure that Chinese government can control in and outflow of data into Chinese borders and outside of that. And then most recently, what we've also seen is, of course, the influencing of society, the influencing of elections, subversion of democratic institutions that is enabled by cyber threats. Apart from crime, apart from individuals and companies suffering from cybercrime, which is pretty straightforward, and most likely every one of us has experienced that at some point, that your account was blocked, or you transferred money to someone that you weren't supposed to transfer money to, you were scammed. All of that, we heard stories, either we were affected directly or indirectly, our friends or family were affected. But cyber threats that we're not talking so much about, and that goes back to my point of why we need to look at the state nexus and how much governments are involved in that, is a number of things. We'll start with political espionage targeting trade negotiations. So if I'm interested in a business deal, and maybe I want to make a better offer, or I want to stop a merger and acquisition, I might conduct a cyber operation and see what they are trading, what they're negotiating, what the balance sheets are, the things that no one is talking publicly about that help me to get an upper hand. You also have espionage targeting domestic policy making. Like, if I want a bill not to be passed, maybe I'm going to compromise the smartphone of a senator, of a congressman, and I will try to figure out where they stand, what are the bills they drafted, who are their political allies, who are they cooperating with, and the easiest way to do that is by compromising their laptop or their phone, right? Same goes for business development or intellectual property. If I want to get something out of a company, maybe I'll conduct a cyber operation against it. Why is that? Because normally we don't really know how to react to cyber operations. We say like, oh yeah, companies will not disclose anything because they are afraid that the public will say like, oh no, we're not going to buy from them anymore. They were hacked. It's really bad. It's a stigma. So they are not talking about that. It's difficult to run police and law enforcement agencies against this because normally the perpetrators of these crimes and these operations are based in other countries, and these countries don't want to cooperate with you to find them. So it's a very low entry barrier for criminals, intelligence agencies to conduct those operations, and they could gain a lot out of that. And then on the really high end, we are of course going to see military espionage, for example, to know what are the plans, what are the deployment plans, which islands should we protect, which islands are they deploying the troops to, active operations as well as planning stages. And the last one, really on the high end there, is something that we've seen in the last couple of years, especially with Russian operations against the Ukraine, but also with Chinese operations, for example, against US targets and allegedly also European targets, is that you're pre-positioning to disrupt critical civilian and military infrastructures in case of war, in case of conflict. So that by the point the war breaks out or the conflict gets hot, you will be able to shut down power grids, you will be able to shut down water supply. You cannot do that from one second to the other. It's not like you're shooting a missile and then a couple of minutes later it hits. You need to prepare. It takes up to 6 months, 9 months to prepare such a cyber operation. So you will do that ahead of time, and you will pre-position yourself in those critical networks. And especially here in the Philippines, if you remember, I was saying that there's geopolitical aspect to cybersecurity. Let's look at one of those, which is, of course, obviously Chinese cyber campaigns. And we're running our own tool tracking Chinese cyber campaigns, ecosystem, and everything that's going on. And you can see that the Philippines is frequently targeted by Chinese cyber campaigns. And that's not like something that, oh my God, no one knows about that. It's like I'm sharing classified information, it's out there. There's so many security companies tracking those incidents that we go back, I think, 2010, 2011 already. If you see new campaigns, they're tracked to certain state nexuses of Chinese threat actors that target Southeast Asian targets, including the Philippines. There's a rich body of analysis out there that states that. And it's something that we all know, and again, we're not really doing something sustainably about that. And then you were like, yeah, but you know what, I mean, there's so many countries, there's so many targets. Well, I'm sure, like, for example, if we look at China, the Chinese threat actors, they can't compromise anyone. I mean, maybe they do that once or twice to the Philippines and we're fine. No, we're not. If you look at the ecosystem that China has created in the last 15 years to enable cyber operations, it's vast. From creating the talent through universities, hacking contests and bug bounties to find vulnerabilities and the best malware that they can get of researchers and then utilize them in their own cyber operations, to bringing in cybersecurity companies and other companies to run cyber operations on the behalf of the government. We have the imee, it's a company in China that was running cyber operations, and when they found data, they were like going to the government and like, hey, we got some data on whatever, space research, you want to get that from us, you want to buy that from us. You have universities in that space. You have entire national legislation which basically says if you find a vulnerability in software or hardware, the first person you tell that to is the government. If you don't do that, you get penalties, you get fined, you might end up in prison. Why do you have to tell that to the government? Yeah, well, because they want to look at it, maybe they want to utilize it in one of the cyber operations. There's an entire, it's called the Chinese New Vulnerability Database, an entire racket of companies in different brackets, depending on how much services in offensive cyber operations they provide to the government. You have cyber militia units all over the country. It is a huge structured ecosystem enabling offensive cyber operation capabilities. And while, for example, the militia units are really more tasked for war scenarios, all the rest is conducting operations on a day-to-day basis. And where does that leave us? I mean, you can argue, well, that's what we say in German, Realpolitik. That's real politics. That's how things are done. Like, you spy, you conduct cyber operations. It depends on what we do about that. That's true. At the same time, what should frighten us is that if you talk, for example, about military buildup, there were these talks about, a war between China and the US and yada, yada, yada. And one of the compelling arguments for the US is always that the US has been conducting so many military operations in the last decades that they know how to fight wars because they're actually fighting wars. And if you look at Chinese cyber operations, they know really well how to conduct cyber operations because, of course, they're conducting them on a daily schedule. So their capabilities are not only in quantity, but also in quality pretty good. They can conduct a large number of low-scale cyber operations, target not so secure topics, and they can also conduct high intensity, high quality cyber operation against even hardened targets. So, and that's just one threat actor from the geopolitical aspect that might and is targeting the Philippines. So if you look at all of that, I want to conclude on cybersecurity is already extremely important for national security, not only in the Philippines, but everywhere. So you need to protect and defend your IT infrastructure, especially those for critical infrastructures, government agencies, corporations, but you will also need to create resilience so that in case you get breached, you know what to do and you know how to get it back up running. Some damage will be done, that's true, but at least you will be able to mitigate even more damage. But on the other hand, you also need a plan of what to do and how to handle those day-to-day operations, because all of us in Europe, in the United States, have become too accustomed with, oh yeah, just another Chinese cyber operation, oh yeah, another Iranian cyber operation. It is really high time that we do something about it. And on that, I want to thank you again so much for having me here, and looking forward to your reactions, your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Dr. Sven. You see, as you will tell from the presentation of Dr. Sven, he gave us more of a more comprehensive view of cybersecurity. We can ask him about more specific activities that we should really be wary as far as the country, the Philippines is concerned, and the region as a whole. But meanwhile, we have panel reactors for this purpose, and most especially to somehow relay the message of the observations of our resource person to the public. Let me start with Mike Cervera, the lead political pundit, as I've explained to you, so that at least his followers will be able to better understand the threat of cybersecurity in the country. Mike?
Yun, good afternoon po kay attorney DJ, kay Prof, sa mga nanonood ngayon sa ating live.
I'll just translate to him.
Nakakatuwa kasi may ganitong pagtitipon para mas maunawaan natin ang mga bagay-bagay na nangyayaring ginagawa sa atin ng mga iba't ibang elemento ng ibang bansa para tayo lamangan sa mga pagkakataon na hindi natin nalaman. At least ngayon ay nagagawa na natin na ma-educate ang ating mga kababayan nang sa ganon, hindi tayo nagiging ignorante sa mga ginagawa ng mga dayuhan na pilit tayong nilalamangan, sabi ko nga kanina, at pilit tayong niloloko sa mga bagay-bagay na propaganda nila.
Salamat, thank you for that, Mike. Now I'm going to give the floor to our lawyer for the masses. You know, what's important really as far as cybersecurity is concerned is the necessary policies that the government must come up with to respond to and address the challenges of cybersecurity, including existing regulations that in fact should already be put to good use as far as the government is concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you no less the Pinoy street lawyer, attorney DJ Jimenez.
Thank you very much, Prof. First and foremost, we wish to express our gratitude to Professors Ben for a very educational and nerve-wracking revelations on how cyber security is affecting not only the world but no less than the Philippines. Now, sir, the data that you presented earlier, I suppose, did not yet even contain the emerging technologies of AI. And given this AI technology, and I'd like to reiterate what I always say, information technology can both be a blessing, but it can both be a heaven, but it can also be a hell. So, based on your experience and your research, sir, what are the best practices in Europe that you think the Philippines should integrate in the fight against cyber security and disinformation and misinformation? Presently, we have in the Philippines the Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012. So imagine 2012. I suppose there is really a need to revisit this law that we've had since 2012. Apart from very few legislation that addresses misinformation, we have the law on libel and some other very, very minor laws. Now, it would truly help our government if you could suggest some practices or best measures that you think can be adopted in the Philippines. So what are those that you think may be considered?
Thank you so much for the question. I think I can give you like 5 things, 2 of them which are best practices that I think we're doing well, and 3 of them which we are not doing well, but I would love that someone else would actually be doing it well. So the first thing is regulation, forcing your critical infrastructures to adapt IT security minimum standards. Because if you're a company and you're not putting in any IT security, well, you're gambling and you might it might pay off, it might not, you might get compromised and you lose money. But it's business, right? I mean, you're responsible for your own business. When it comes to critical infrastructures, so those providing power, water, whatnot, It's not only your money that you are gambling with, which you are completely entitled to if you run a business, but you are basically taking the chance away from essential services to be run. And that means that society will suffer and people might die. So critical infrastructures
inform the public that the executive director of the CICC, the Cybercrime Investigation of the Philippines, came here. So we have that agency.
extended to beyond cybercrime to make sure that they are the powerhouse for consulting businesses on what best practices to use, what minimum requirements, support Congress to come up with good bills, like having really a powerhouse national cybersecurity agency.
So empower this CICC.
Yes. And widen their authority and their scope.
And in Europe, well, how do you call that?
We call it National Cybersecurity Agency. And if you, for example, look at it, Germany, for example, has a National Cybersecurity Agency that has